Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk briefly about a World Economic Forum article that I recently read about the top 10 risks in the next 2 years. And frankly, it breaks it into three different parts, or actually six: technological, societal, geographical, environmental, economic. And in these sections, we'll start out with technological as number one. They say the biggest risk in the next 2 years is misinformation or disinformation. If you spend much time on YouTube, you'll see that that's a pretty big problem right now. I never would have thought people would believe in the way that they have been led to if I hadn't been educated these last 3 years. I mean, the back and forth about, something as simple as gender is causing people difficult times, and they can't figure that out. How are we going to solve the world's problems if that is the power of our thoughts, right? So number one is technological. Number two is environmental. It's saying extreme weather events. Extreme weather events just happen, and so that is always a risk. It's going to happen. Based on your geography, you know what's normal for your section of the world, so you can prepare for that as best as possible. The worst are tornadoes, because right now we can't predict them successfully. The third one is state-based armed conflict. And I got to say this. If you look at the history of the 20th century, what was said about the 20th century is more people were killed by governments in that time than at every point in world history. So it would lead to believe that this century, this situation would not be any different. This millennia possibly would not be any different. But state-based armed conflicts. The worst thing that happened to mankind was government. Okay, if civilizations could run in a way where government wasn't required, that would be best. However, the Bible says when Jesus came that the government would be on his shoulders. So the idea of that is if people are biblical and have a Christ-like concern for all people, then government should run that way. That's not been what we've seen. America has the best government suggested based on world governments and how they work, but in our democracy, in our republic, it doesn't work great because of a two-party system. If everybody was limited to term limits and everybody had to be transparent in their activities and bills were less than 10 pages or 20 pages, you could start improving how it performs with that. And, having people become billionaires and millionaires from being in government and staying in government for 60 plus years, that's not how it was meant to be. This recent president was the worst leader ever when I look at society and I read back, including the downfall of Rome, there's never been anyone worse in power than Joe Biden. Is the biggest joke in leadership. And I'm not saying that because I don't like Joe Biden. I'm just saying he's the worst I've ever seen. He actually was not even fit to be in office, and we didn't remove him. So state-based armed conflict, it's easy to understand that would be the third top 10 risk in the next 2 years. One after that is societal polarization. This is not even a real thing. It is now. It's societal polarization, and that's a societal risk. That is when governments are using stuff to manipulate the way people think. Over medication, over drug utilization. It decreases people's mental capacity to actually use reason and logic on their own. The lack of faith and belief in the Bible, the lack of faith and believing in God will drive that even further. So the more society moves in those directions, the easier they're going to be to manipulate and polarize. And all this has been seen historically. So you can go back and look at the history of whatever great generation you like. Rome is one, Xerxes and then that area was another. You can go back all the way back to ancient Samaria and see how things destroyed themselves. And polarization is a way that you destroy a country. What happens from that's not necessarily bad. If you look at Russia, the USSR, when it broke up into smaller countries that were, successful in their own accord. One of which has been a war with Russia for the last 5-6 years, in Ukraine, which is a very successful country on its own. And when you think about Rome, think about Italy, and the other countries there, they were very successful on their own. So it's not to say that when a country breaks apart, that what comes after is worse than what was there. If you can get to a point of truth and living properly for the Lord, and I say that because if you follow the Ten Commandments, then you're treating people justly. And so if you're treating people justly, believers, non-believers, all will be happier because they're being treated fairly and just. If you do that, you can end societal polarization and the issues that comes with that. Number 5 is cyber espionage and warfare, and that's a technological risk. I agree with that, but ultimately that's not a societal thing, I don't think. That's a organizational thing between companies. I mean, it can impact your utilization of the internet and things that should be safe, but some things don't belong on the internet. And that's why people, when they talk about saving their data in the cloud, so you're going to trust somebody else's hard drive over your hard drive, and you're going to trust that hard drive, which is a bigger target because there's so much available on it. That doesn't really make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense. Call me old school, but I think you don't do things that way. The 6th one is pollution, and that's an environmental risk. I agree with that. People are messy. If you don't believe that, drive down the street a mile and a half. See how many pieces of trash are there. It angers me. I have to pick up on my property every couple of months because people drive down the road and throw the trash out of the vehicle. Or they throw trash in the back of their truck that they know is going to get blown out at some point. Those type of people, they don't respect anything. So if they were biblical people and they live by a set of rules, they wouldn't do that either, because even that is something that's disgusting when you're putting your trash on other people. Number 7, it says inequality, and that is a social risk. Here's my thing on that. If you have a Bill of Rights and you have a Constitution, then everyone's equal. Okay? The choices you make in your life are going to change how you end up. Poor people can become rich in Western civilizations. And then their kids can be anti-Western civilizations and think they can get better lives in China. When you talk to people in China or North Korea, where they're put to death for their beliefs and killed if they find a Bible in their homes, inequality, I think, is always a risk. People are always treated poorly. So somewhere in the world, we should be helping improve that situation instead of arguing about what a man or a woman is or other things. Okay? The 8th is involuntary migration or displacement. That would be because of war or threat. So, for example, in Mexico, a lot of people are moving north because the cartels and drug lords are murdering and raping thousands of people down there. So it is every person's purpose to improve the situation and security for their family. So that population is moving north because they don't have a choice. So, the way you do that is you annex Mexico, you make them states, you kill all these people that are killing innocents, and you're done with it. That's how you fix it. And that may be a 10-year fix or a 3-year fix, but there's been some other governments that have fixed these exact same problems in a very short period of time. It was extremely effective. So that's number 8. Number 9 is geoeconomic confrontation. And they say that's geopolitical. Geoeconomic confrontation. So that would be when you find oil somewhere and it belongs to another country. And then a country that is more established in the modern thought, I never say is better than that country, because the bodies of people evolve differently in different places, and based on the amount of technology and money that you have in your locality, the better you're going to be, even if you're the lowest rung of that society. So geoeconomic confrontation, that's another big word for when a government decides they want to take from another place. That's what that is. And the 10th is erosion of human rights and or civic freedoms, and that is under a societal problem. Here's the point. The biggest mouthpiece for those type limitations are in Western cultures, which don't live through these things. So I don't mind that being a risk if it was actually put in a reality scope, meaning places like Europe and America and England, the Western world, should go and help where they can, and other places that don't have the freedoms and the human rights that we have in these places. But as long as we keep focusing on the left and right in our developed countries, instead of focusing on those in the greatest need, then you'll always have this be limited in the impact that we have. Biblically, a man's supposed to be strong and search for justice and supposed to follow the commandments. If all men on this planet did that, the world would be different. If we used biblical law in the book of Deuteronomy as the book of law, and we used the wisdom of Solomon in judgments, the world could get correct pretty quick. And ultimately, biblically, it says that's what's going to happen, right? It says ultimately there's going to be one government. So, as long as it's a government of the people and not of a corporation, that should be good. But in the top 10 risks in the next 2 years, that's what they are. I'll put this World Economic Forum front as the thumbnail so you can look at that on your own. But yeah, it's interesting to think about that in the scope of this. And here would be my challenge to anyone that watches this channel. Read as much as you can, right? Learn from what came before, and then do your part to make tomorrow better than yesterday. And then when it comes to an individual standpoint, do something to make yourself better today than you were yesterday. Okay? And that just takes reading a little bit, watching videos such as these, and doing what you can to have an impact on the things that truly are risks to our folks and the folks to come after. I'm Ben. If you like subject matter such as this, please subscribe. Please share the video, and please like if it made you think something differently. Be good.